Hello everyone, welcome to the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm Michael Rodby, your host. With me today is senior recruiter Dan Hawkins.
Hiya.
And we'll be interviewing Joe Harford from Airship Images. Hello Joe.
Hiya.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Happy to be here. Pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about Airship and what you do as CEO.
Yeah, so Airship is a artwork, full service artwork vendor for the games industry. So we provide everything from concept art, characters, rigging, and integration into game engines. So we're a full service, full whack character company. Recently, we've been starting to do environments as well, and a few other bits and pieces, because we try and facilitate everything that a client wants, and those shopping lists get sort of bigger and bigger every year. So my job as CEO, I'm responsible for driving the business forward, the growth, and also instilling like the company culture and ensuring that I think that meets the standards of the industry, but also the vision that I have going forward for the company. And yeah, that sort of changes day to day. So it's a pretty interesting job.
Yeah, it sounds it. So you were talking a little bit about the company culture that you instill. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about that and what your kind of company culture is at Airship Images?
Yeah, so I think every business needs to have a culture or a vision that they sort of inhibit, and mine has always been personal growth. Like I'm never afraid to change. I'm never afraid to sort of adapt to new situations, and I love new tools. I love change. I love it when the tool that I was using or the method I was using is completely irrelevant. It forces me to go and seek out new ways of doing things, which is just tremendously exciting and keeps that job varied. So it's that element of personal growth that I'm trying to build across the whole company. Sort of that covers a whole range of different things that we can do for our staff, because we're a big team, and a lot of companies say that, but we really consider it like an employee first business. So if they're growing all the time, if our team are growing, we have a saying like we all rise together. So we try to get everyone helping each other, and sometimes that's difficult, and sometimes there's a lot of growth problems, teething issues, and then we recognize that we need more people on training only to support the growth of everyone as artists. But then also like separately to that as well. So it's like educating graduates on financial planning and financial literacy, so that they get more information outside of university. They come to Airship, and then we set them up for life. We set them up to grow and to succeed. And it's been a long battle. It's been a long journey, but we're gradually sort of seeing the fruits of that coming through. And some of our I'm just one for using football metaphors all the time. Like we're seeing like some of our academy grads go on to higher positions and be promoted to seniors, and that's really deeply fulfilling.
Yeah, I can imagine it being really, really rewarding.
Yeah, so with that, obviously you start people on quite early sometimes as juniors and stuff like that. What kind of advice would you give to someone trying to get into the industry from a junior working their way up? Have you got any advice for those kind of people?
Yeah, for juniors working their way up or even pre-university, I think you have to assess where you are at and always knowing what your current skill level is. So that like getting honest feedback from people, emailing people. Some of the people I've hired have just like LinkedIn messaged me like every week for like 6 months, and then I'll be like, all right, I'll give you a shot. Like you're not ready yet, but the determination and drive is there. So I think it's really important to understand, are you good enough right now for the industry? Because if you are, maybe university is not for you. Maybe you're ready to just go out and get a job and learn on the trade. I come from a family of artists and builders, which couldn't be more different in some respects. But that apprenticeship model it really does work, learning on the job. So if you can go to university and have all of that education and that time to grow, and that like honest appreciation for your current level and whether you're ready yet, like that's probably the biggest thing is seeking out an understanding of where you are now, where you need to get to, and how to get there, and asking people to weigh in on that. Asking professionals asking recruiters for honest feedback all the time, and just seeking out that really honest feedback to grow.
Yeah. I think it seems like it's a running theme throughout what we've talked about so far, of those kind of industry connections, and obviously paths crossing and uncrossing and stuff like that. What would you say is critical in terms of maintaining good working relationships with people, either in the past or in the future? How do you keep those going, and how do you maintain those connections?
I would say that if you can give people opportunities at any time you can, then people will always stay in touch. If you have an opportunity in the future, you see a job that somebody else would be perfect for, ping them a message and say, I've just seen this job. This is a great one for you. I think you should go for this. Or anytime that I couldn't do enough of the work, I passed it on to one of the connections that I've made in the past. And I think that a lot of the times those don't work out, but if you keep trying, they work out eventually. And the reality is that I haven't kept a lot of those connections alive. I've been pretty poor with that, because I've been so focused on building Airship and my own artwork that that does fall by the wayside, and that's a real shame. But when I started my career, a lot of the people I know now, a lot of the connections that I'll build on, they're related to the people I met in my early career. So I think even with the people who work for Airship now who have just graduated, it's look around at the sort of 5 or 6 people around you, they might be the people in 10 years, 15 years time that are leads and seniors at massive companies, and those are the people you'll sort of consider that your network. And if you can keep building that over time, so I just think it's never too soon to network, even really early age, and that's with your peers, not necessarily trying to find out, seek out the top people. You want to rise with your group, because you're going to be the ones innovating in 5, 6, 7 years. Seniors are going to, we're going to be having kids and settling down and buying houses, and maybe we're not going to be quite as relevant. We might go into more management positions or set up our own companies. So you can learn from great artists, but don't underestimate how powerful it is to network with people around you at your level as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. So that's kind of like a long-term thing in terms of networking. It's always something you've got to bring forward, definitely. But just talking in the last year or so, obviously with the pandemic, especially face-to-face networking has been difficult. As a studio, have you had to move to remote working, and what's that? If so, what's that kind of been like?
Yeah, we have basically the whole studio move remotely. We've hired a huge number of people during the pandemic, though, so kind of onboarding all of those people as well remotely, and never really seeing that full amount of people in the office. That's been a real challenge. And putting in those operations things to ensure that people work together as a team remotely has been a real challenge too. So we've obviously moved to, like most companies, we've moved to Microsoft Teams, or doing a lot more stuff on Zoom and Slack, and those systems, which has been brilliant. But I think I made a decision at the start of the pandemic that we just try and communicate as much as possible. Over communication is the right way forward right now, and that's something that we set out as a mantra for our external partnerships as well. That over communication is better than just communication or under communication. If people get a bit annoyed that you're telling them the updates on their projects all the time, well, they'll be a lot more annoyed if you don't. So we try and over communicate with all of our clients, and that stood us in good stead. And that same thing carries through to staff too. If they know when we're going back in the office. I mean, obviously, with the pandemic, there's so many unknowns, and that creates a lot of anxiety. And recognizing that and trying to communicate those things back as often as possible when we're able to, I think is the way that we've managed that. But yeah, when it all started and we moved remote, we made a decision that we'd all go remote right away. And that we put in a huge amount of security as well, because when you go remote, you have a huge infrastructure problem of trying to remain a secure company. And as an external partner, rather than a game studio, which has a little bit more control over their team, their projects, their systems, because we work on I think right now we've got 31 active projects across the industry. We've got to make sure that every single one of those is high security, and goes is in line with all the security protocols that those companies ask for. And that's been probably the biggest challenge of all while going remote, is making sure that we stay that secure and reliable company. And that's cost a lot of money, but it's been a worthy investment, because we've been able to grow and actually capitalize on that reliability and security when it's a little more difficult for some larger or some other established companies to maintain that.
That's been a big issue in the VFX industry, isn't it? NDAs and things like that, and because they are so tight in them industries, letting lots of people work on sensitive content from home has been a real scare, isn't it? And I think that's affected that industry a lot more than ours, from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree. It's made things very, very difficult, and there are certain things that just cannot be done right now. I mean, you can't go out and scan actors. You can't really do a few months ago you couldn't do mocap. You couldn't do live shooting. So like live shooting for then VFX has been a lot more difficult, and that has created a sort of a big backlog, but also like a lot of projects are shut down. So yeah, VFX companies are struggling. But we've just hired another artist from the VFX industry who then we can sort of take through our pipeline and teach how to work in games. I think there's a lot of crossover there. A lot of great skills that people in games don't necessarily have, that people in the VFX industry do have, that then they can transition across, given the right sort of training and resources. And rather than expecting them to go and retrain, if we can help them retrain and teach them how to work in games, that's going to serve us very well and access like a new talent pool.
Do you think the industries are getting slightly closer together when it comes to skill sets compared to a few years ago?
Yeah, 100%. I think that it's an easier job now to transition from games to film and film to games. Mm-hmm. There are definitely restrictions that we have in the games world that you don't always have in the VFX world. But then you also you don't always see like a character just from the front in games. It's all the way around. The props, they're all the way around. They have to be sort of complete assets, and so things are actually move a little bit slower in the games industry than the VFX industry, where it's about generating ultimate quality but as quick as possible. And I think with games we get a little bit more freedom to take a little bit longer on certain things, and yeah, that helps with the learning side too. So we can't expect somebody from visual effects to just immediately jump into the games world, because they've got to learn all those restrictions. But yeah, they're professionals, and they are closer than ever.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit to the remote work, a lot of studios are tending to move that way regardless of the pandemic. Obviously, we talked earlier about the benefits of being in a studio. You've got those people that you admire. You've got that culture and that dynamic to really motivate you and stuff. For Airship, post-pandemic, do you see it being more remote based, or do you think you go back to more of a studio culture?
Studio culture, I've got to say, I think that one of the biggest things that you miss out on if you are fully remote is learning from peers. It's building those network and those friendships. So again, sure, if you're a senior and you've got a house and you've got a good working setup and you've got money and you're able to work from home and you've got that support, great. Seniors can go off site. That's not a problem. So we might see more seniors going off site, or more sort of established maybe principal artists. But for juniors and grads, if you want to get into the games industry and learn, it takes, this has been said many, many times, but it takes 10 minutes to do something on Zoom. It takes 1 minute in a studio. And if just having somebody over your shoulder saying like, oh, maybe that would be a bit better like this, or that isn't quite so good. This is how I'd improve it, and they just come and draw a little bit. I mean, not only is that harder to do remotely, it's just not getting done remotely. People are not bothering to do that because they're so busy anyway. I mean, we're seeing a big drop in productivity because of the time it takes to help train people online. And I don't see systems evolving or new software to make that any easier. So for some people, working from home it's great. You know, people have some sort of anxiety about going into offices, but other people absolutely thrive in those conditions, in that scenario. So it's about flexibility for me. It's about saying, well, I understand that it's not, you don't always want to be coming in, but you could come in 4 days a week or 3 days a week, so it's about some flexibility. So I don't see that we built what we built as a distributed remote company. I don't see how we could remain a high security, reliable company in this way. I mean, we're more of a service company than a game studio, and we operate within the realms of what a service company does, and with a big focus on training and career development. I think, you know, in-house is the way forward, but with the flexibility to allow certain people to work remotely and you know, enjoy that. But that's one of the reasons why we're in Lytham. We have a gorgeous office on the seafront of Lytham, because you can buy a house within 15 minutes walk, and your commute is very, very small. I love how I absolutely detest commutes for me. I really do. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of talk about expecting artists to work in their free time, to go home and then learn and learn and learn. And I mean, that is how you get good as an artist. Painters don't only paint between 9 and 5. You know, you live that world because you love it. But there's a big difference between production artwork and personal growth and professional growth. And there's certain things that you're expected to learn at work, and other things that help your job. So I'm a big believer in, you know, doing your own things outside of work that then help your primary career, but are things that you're interested in.
So I agree so much with the grad side of things. I've had a couple of like kind of similar conversations with hesitant grads who don't want to leave their hometown and that kind of thing, which is totally understandable. And quite common, obviously not for you, off to Germany at 18. But no, one of the biggest things I say is, look, be flexible. I says, if you really want a remote position, you're missing out on so much development, and being there and forming relationships with your seniors is really, really important. And if you're going to sit at home just knocking work out, it's going to affect your career loads.
And just looping back on something I said a minute ago with the commute, you know, if you're working somewhere where your commute is an hour or you know, hour and a half or even 40 minutes, you're losing 1.5 to 2 hours of your day on where you could have been spent life drawing or developing your career, or doing something entirely different, going playing football with, you know, mates and learning about team, learning about other things that do affect your primary career. So that was one of our reasons for being in Lytham as well, because we're connected. We're an hour from Manchester. We're not that far from London on a fast train, but it takes that whole commute out of it, and that goes with our vision of personal growth, of giving people the ability to walk to work and back, which is healthy in itself anyway, but then also the extra time. You know, we're giving people more time. And as we're basically eradicated or crunch from our studio, we finish at 5:30, we do very, very minimal overtime, and if we do, it's fully paid. Then again, it's that same ethos of giving people all of their evening. It's giving people that time so they can go and develop in their own way. And that's also been a big part of what we've been trying to achieve over the last year. And our head of operations, or our COO now, Declan, has been really instrumental in building out those processes and those production methods so that actually becomes possible.
Yeah. In terms of that development then, either personal or for your primary career, at Airship, what kind of skills or software or, you know, character traits would you look for someone coming on board?
Determination and a reason for doing what they're doing are probably the two primary things I look for. I look for somebody who's not just there because they've just gone through university and then they're looking for a job and they've done what was required, looking for somebody who has more of a why about them when it comes to why they want to work in games, or why they want to build characters, why they enjoy using 3D software. I mean, it crashes all the time. There's lots of issues. It's difficult. Why do you love that? Like, if you can give me a good answer to that, you've probably got a job. So, and another thing is that I don't always necessarily look for a complete portfolio of finished work. Like I want to see the individual skills that are necessary to sort of nurture into a whole package. I want to see fundamental skills. If you're coming for a character art job, I want to see hard surface ability, so you can model all the parts of the character. I want to see just an understanding of form and anatomy. But I don't need to. We don't need to see hundreds of different sculpts of anatomy. We're not anatomists. I want to see observation skills, because that's a production schedule, and that's where I separate the art and the production a little. I'll go home and I'll write all the muscles, I'll sculpt all of the muscles, I'll sculpt crochet things all the time, and I'll try deeply to understand that from an art perspective. But at work, I'm mostly copying silhouette and the way that the character looks. It's an observation and a transference into a digital form that we're sort of looking for, not necessarily that complete fundamental understanding of anatomy. So it's understanding those types of things, that it's about the skills that you're bringing, not the full deep understanding of the artiness that I think goes a long way to achieving the skills that you need to be employable within that profession. But that's a whole topic for another podcast.
So just picking up on what you said briefly in that, I think it's definitely important about having that why, and that usually stems from early inspirations and stuff. Like you said, Final Fantasy and the animations between those was a big influence on you. Do you have any current influences now that you're always bringing into your artwork?
Yeah, so I still do some artwork, but right now I'm learning some other skills as well. So I'm really into like web UI design right now. So I'm sort of teaching myself web programming, web application programming, so I can build out like web applications that then help Airship or help my other businesses and help other things. So I'm quite interested. I love looking through like just portfolio sites of like the best UI design, like the best portfolio websites, the best of anything, because that's, if we were a web design company instead of or supplying services to a web design company, like it would almost be a similar business. Like you have to have a love for something. So I do play games. I love historical games. I think I'm really enjoying those sort of RPGs set in like medieval England. I can't get away from that. So I don't have any specific influences, but when it comes to artists right now, but yeah, the ones that I started my career with are still knocking out incredible work all the time. Probably everyone's inspiration is Raphael Grassetti, but there's a good reason. He's established himself as a fantastic art director, really good professional artist, and also a great personal artist too. He works on his own personal artwork that is not game ready. It's not for the games industry. But then he takes on brand new projects like NFTs, and he's always at the forefront of everything. And I think that is a huge inspiration for me, because he combines like art and business, and that's really what I'm all about as well. It's understanding both sides of the coin, and so that would be where my inspirations are.
So you're teaching yourself like sort of a bit of programming. I looked on your LinkedIn just before this interview, and I noticed one of the skills that you said you were learning was speed cubing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
me and Dan were talking about it before the podcast, and I had a friend that used to do it. Ah, there we go.
We said it's a shame we're not doing it on site because we could just throw one at you.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yeah, normally when I'm on the phone to Dan and we're talking, I'm just doing that cubing the whole time. But yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had to ask because I was like I said, I had a guy that I used to be mates with at school, and he'd always be doing one. So I was just like, oh, I wonder what Joe's quickest time is.
19 seconds.
90. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating, the idea of Rubik's cubes and how to solve them. It's got that whole stretch from being able to do it in 6 minutes and just understanding the basics to understanding like the incredibly complex systems, the 700 algorithms that you need to be sort of sub 7 seconds. And I'm also, as a separate business, I'm very interested in education for people like at school, like kids, education development, learning development, motor skill development, and teaching. And I think Rubik's cubes and like speed stacking and things like that in schools, they teach so many concepts of like hand-eye coordination, problem solving, pattern recognition. They teach so many things, and also this ability that you can start out being terrible at something and then very quickly see that exponential progression, and then you understand that there's where you're at and then where somebody else is at. And if you can put a figure on that and say, well, I'm at 20 seconds, well, there's somebody else is at 15 or 10, how do I get to that level? I think that's just a really easy to understand concept that then you can apply later in your life, in career, in all sorts of careers. Yeah, so that's why I cube.
Yeah, well, definitely, it's almost, it might be a stretch, but it seems very applicable to particularly like art and stuff in a computing sense, because you've got the dexterity and the ability, but at the same time there is that algorithm and the mathematical side behind it as well. So it seems very transferable almost to an extent
to life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always loved that. Always loved those types of things, those puzzles, like juggling. I love that. And I was skateboarding for 15 years, and until my knees kind of decided that I was too old. But that was one of the great things about the early days of Crytek, that we used to work on artwork, and then we'd go outside in the parking lot and we'd all skate together. And it was probably 7 or 8 of us, or maybe even 9 or 10, that all skated, and we did that outside, and that really bonded everyone together too. So I think anything that you can sort of do and create that community around you, and also something that isn't your primary career, doing it all the time, have a massive influence on sort of your ability to understand conceptually what it is to get better at things. So big believer in that.
Yeah, so you said about developing those communities and stuff. Is Airship doing anything particularly with communities and that kind of outreach and stuff?
We're about to launch a big marketing campaign. Well, not marketing campaign, but a campaign for the charity Autistica.
Okay, yeah.
So we partnered with Autistica, who are sort of the UK's leading autism research charity, and we originally were going to do a little donation or an auction, something to just help them to raise a little bit of money, but then decided that like we've got a bigger platform now, we need to do a little bit more here. So we're running an art competition within Airship, where we donate for everyone who enters the tournament. I mean, it's kind of a tournament, a challenge. Enters a piece of artwork, then we'll be donating £100, and hopefully raise five grand for Autistica, and also generate a whole bunch of like great artwork that we can share publicly, and which will then help them get a wider reach and a wider audience for spreading that awareness. So that's something that it's going to be a lot of fun. It's with this. We're giving everybody the restriction of working within this magic of voxel software, which is basically like pro Minecraft.
Yeah.
And because the idea is that we want everyone to individually think about every block that they're putting in, and understand, seeing it from that perspective around the theme of anxiety and the future, because autism is often described as anxiety about the future, whether it's events or emotions. And so we're doing a piece of artwork representing that, and we'll be sharing that all over sort of social channels.
So in terms of the future, which we've been talking quite a bit about, has Airship got any particular projects on the horizon that you can talk about?
Well, no. I've always been terrified of breaking NDAs. It takes about 2 years for a game to be announced before I feel like I can even talk about it, just because it's such an important part of the business is NDAs. We're working on some phenomenal projects though with some of the top studios, and we're really grateful to be involved in some of these the most anticipated games of the next next couple of years. So if you go and look at the most anticipated games list on somewhere like GameSpot, there are other websites available. Then we're working on most of them. We're in a really interesting position right now where we can't grow fast enough to support the range of companies that would like to work with us, which is just highlights what a great product that we have, but also what a great team and a reliability that we have. That model of extending people's teams is really working for us, because I think as we go into the future, like supply chain management, making sure that the people that you hire and the companies you hire are also treating their staff well. I think that's a much bigger issue than it's ever been, and it's always been that way for Airship. If we treat our team well and we try and build a team that feels like they're taken care of, and we're taking care of all of their growth, but also their health, their safety, and providing them with that great environment to work in, and not treating them like that traditional outsourced model where it feels like it's just a whole bunch of people working night and day, then that reflects well on the companies that come to Airship as well. If Sony come to us and want to work with us on a new project, they can understand that we're going to be treating our staff the way they would, and that's sort of responsibility for their supply chain is handled well with a company like ours. So our future now, our games, we've got some really interesting things planned. We're opening 2 new locations soon as well to build out new teams. It's incredibly excited about announcing those, and moving into some new areas as well, within sort of technical animation, within character concept art, and a couple of other areas that we'll be revealing soon to coincide with the launch of our new rebranding and our website, which will be in a couple of months' time. So yeah, the future is really exciting for Airship, and for me, the longer term projects, where we can really get our teeth into them and build those teams, so people feel very very close to the projects that they work on. That's one of the most rewarding things about the industry, and one of the things that I think we can do better as a company is not just, we jump from project to project to project. So a graduate might get 7 credits on AAA games within a year, but there's also something to be said for feeling very connected to the project that you're on, and sort of building a team around that. So that's something that we're going to be trying to do even more in future.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Joe, thank you very much for coming on the Aardvark Swift podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. So if you are interested in working with Airship, we have roles on our website, and of course visit Airship's website that will be new and improved by the sounds of it sometime soon. Thanks for listening. I've been Michael Rugby with Dan and Joe. Cheers.
Thank you.